The transmission came at dawn, a pulse of encrypted data from the void. The message was simple, arrogant, absolute. Humanity, you will surrender unconditionally. You will bow before the authority of the Galactic Empire and accept your place beneath us. Refusal will be met with extinction. Captain Elias Voss stood in the war room of UEN Revenant, staring at the holographic projection. The Empire's fleet, a monstrous wall of metal and firepower, had already breached the outer edges of Sol. Thousands of warships, each one larger than the entire Martian Defense Force, drifted toward Earth. The countdown to planetary siege had begun. He exhaled slowly. The war had never been winnable, not in the way wars were traditionally fought. Humanity had always been the underdog, a young species clawing its way through the stars, fearless but fragile. Against the Empire's billion-strong armada, their fleet was a collection of relics, outdated warships, and guerrilla tactics. Survival was no longer an option. Admiral Kirchner, head of the United Earth Navy, flicked a hand across the display. A new projection replaced the fleet, a simple, nameless directive buried deep within classified archives. Project Last Dawn. We knew this day would come, Kirchner said, his voice a low, tired growl. They believe they'll take us. They won't. He turned to Voss. You know your orders. Voss nodded. Initiate Last Dawn. There was no room for hesitation. The moment the words left his mouth, the system responded. Across Earth and her colonies, silent protocols activated. AI cores shifted from defensive calculations to scorched Earth directives. Deep space mines, thought to be decommissioned, rearmed themselves. Cities reprogrammed their power grids, priming for overload. Black sites long buried beneath lunar soil prepared for detonation. And still, the Empire advanced, oblivious. A chime interrupted the silence. A new transmission, this time, a live feed. Grand Marshal Threxel Vikaer appeared in the center of the room, his towering insectoid frame gleaming in ceremonial armor. The eyes of a conqueror, ancient and cold, studied them with something close to amusement. So predictable, Threxel said, his voice a guttural blend of superiority and boredom. A lesser species playing at war. Do you think defiance will grant you mercy? Voss stepped forward. No, he said simply. Threxel tilted his head, as if intrigued by the blunt response. Then you understand your position. Your kind is a brief flicker in the grand design of the universe. Submit, and your remnants may yet serve a purpose. Voss held his gaze. You came expecting slaves. What you will get is fire. For the first time, something flickered in Threxel's expression. Annoyance, perhaps. Then it was gone. Very well, the Marshal said. You had your chance. When next we speak, it will be over the ruins of your world. The transmission cut. A heavy silence settled over the room. No one spoke. They all knew the weight of what they had just done. Kirchner turned to Voss. Get to your ship. Make sure it's carried out to the letter. Voss saluted sharply and strode toward the exit. There was no time for second thoughts. The Revenant slipped through the void, cloaked in darkness. It was one of Earth's last stealth battleships, a relic of past wars refitted for a mission no one had ever wanted to execute. Voss stood on the bridge, eyes locked on the tactical display. The Empire's fleet was spreading like a slow-moving storm, enveloping Mars and Titan in its path. Humanity had minutes, maybe an hour at best, before the first wave struck Earth. His second-in-command, Lieutenant Wren Halstead, approached. Her face was set in stone, but he caught the slight tension in her jaw. Orders confirmed. The network is primed. Once the fleet enters low orbit, we detonate. Casualty estimates. She hesitated. Total. He exhaled. There was no other way. If they let the Empire conquer Earth, humanity would be erased in every way that mattered. This wasn't just about survival, it was about denying the enemy everything. Voss tapped his comms. All ships, hold position. We wait until they commit. Outside the bridge's viewport, the distant curve of Earth shimmered beneath its artificial defenses. A home they could not protect, only deny. The minutes stretched. Then, at last, the Empire made its move. The first wave of dreadnoughts cut into low orbit, preparing for planetary bombardment. Smaller destroyers flanked them, targeting Earth's defenses. The second wave followed, cruisers filling the gaps, locking humanity in a slow, suffocating grip. Voss steeled himself. Execute! The response was immediate. Across Earth and the colonies, Last Dawn came alive. On Mars, reactors detonated in synchronized bursts, consuming the Empire's ground forces before they could establish control. Orbital stations around Titan overloaded their cores, ripping apart warships with electromagnetic shockwaves. AI viruses flooded the Empire's network, turning their own automated systems against them. And then, the final act. From deep within the Mariana Trench, a chain reaction began. The fail-safe mechanisms of Earth's geothermal stabilizers reversed, sending shockwaves through the planet's crust. Cities powered down, then back up in blinding flashes. A tremor passed through the atmosphere, an unnatural hush before the storm. Then, fire. The sky ignited. Artificial lightning crawled across the ionosphere as controlled nuclear chain reactions shattered orbital positions. Entire sections of the planet's surface, critical infrastructure, spaceports, industrial hubs, erased themselves in a matter of seconds. The Empire's fleet recoiled in sudden, brutal confusion. Voss watched it unfold in silence. He had seen war before. He had never seen this. The comms crackled. A panicked Imperial officer screamed in his native tongue before static consumed the signal. Another transmission followed, frantic, disjointed, as a dreadnought lost control and plummeted into Earth's atmosphere, burning up before impact. Threxel's face reappeared on the bridge's main display. Gone was the arrogance. What have you done? Voss met his gaze, voice steady. You came to conquer. There will be nothing left to take. The channel cut as another wave of detonations consumed the Imperial advance. Voss turned to Halstead. Status. She swallowed. They're pulling back. A grim, bitter victory. They had not beaten the Empire. They had only ensured they would never be ruled. And it was only the beginning. The Empire had expected resistance. It had not expected the war to end before it truly began. Grand Marshal Threxel V. Kayer stood at the helm of the Eternal Dominion, his flagship, as reports flooded in. His mandibles tightened as he reviewed the disaster unfolding below. Mars was gone. The industrial zones and colonial outposts, eradicated. The orbital shipyards, once poised to serve as the Empire's forward operating base, obliterated. Titan's atmosphere was now an electric storm of radioactive debris. The once prized conquest of humanity was turning to ash before his eyes. This was not war. It was suicide on a galactic scale. Threxel's clawed hand curled into a fist. What madness is this? A trembling officer spoke. The human defenses, they were never designed to repel us. They were built to destroy everything they controlled. Threxel's gaze snapped toward the viewport, where Earth loomed beneath them. He had thought this world fragile. A mere stepping stone to the greater empire. Instead, it was an executioner's altar. And the blade was falling. On the bridge of the UEN Revenant, Captain Elias Voss watched the chaos unfold. The Empire's advance had faltered. Their fleet, so sure of an easy conquest, was now struggling to adapt. Some ships had already turned back, retreating into deep space. Others remained, confused, hesitant. They don't understand, Lieutenant Wren Halstead muttered beside him. They will, Voss said. Soon. From orbit, he could see the planet-wide devastation playing out in real time. Power grids failed in coordinated blackouts, plunging major cities into darkness before controlled detonations wiped them off the map. Military bases self-destructed, taking anything of value with them. The AI-driven cyber warfare initiative had already infiltrated the Empire systems, turning their automated units against their own fleets. And then came the final phase. A low tremor passed through the ship as seismic detonators, hidden beneath the Earth's oceans, activated. The Mariana Trench split open, unleashing thermal instability across tectonic plates. Cities along the Pacific Rim collapsed into the churning abyss. Supervolcanoes, long thought dormant, erupted in tandem, spewing fire and ash into the heavens. The Empire had come to claim Earth. They would inherit a tomb. Sir, Halstead said, voice tight. They're sending a distress signal. Fleet-wide transmission. Voss gave a slow nod. Put it through. The main screen flickered to life. Threxel's face filled the display, the usual arrogance replaced with something that might have been disbelief. This is not war, the Grand Marshal spat. This is insanity. Voss met his gaze, unmoved. You came here to take everything from us. We decided you'd get nothing. You're destroying your own world. Better dead than conquered, Voss said. Threxel's mandibles clicked together. For the first time, Voss saw hesitation. The Grand Marshal was beginning to realize he had miscalculated, fatally. Voss leaned in. Leave now, and your remaining forces might survive. Stay, and they burn with us. Threxel's eyes narrowed. You think your defiance will be remembered? You will be forgotten. Extinct. Voss tilted his head. Then tell me, Grand Marshal, why are your ships still retreating? Threxel's face contorted with rage, but the transmission cut out. A silence settled over the bridge. Then, Halstead exhaled. It's working. They're afraid, Voss said. And they should be. In orbit, Imperial commanders scrambled for solutions. Orders were contradictory. Some demanded full retreat, others pushed for continued assault. But every second of hesitation cost them. The cyber warfare virus was spreading. Warships turned on each other, their targeting systems compromised. Entire battalions of automated infantry descended to the surface only to be hacked mid-drop, their weapon systems overloading in self-destruction. Aboard the Eternal Dominion, Threxel's rage boiled over. We are the Galactic Empire. We do not retreat. But we cannot stay, one of his tacticians admitted. The humans have nothing left to lose. They fight without logic. Threxel bared his fangs. Logic had always dictated warfare, strategy, numbers, calculated force. But humans had rewritten the rules. And the longer he stayed, the deeper he fell into their trap. He turned sharply. Signal all ships. Full withdrawal. We regroup beyond the Kuiper Belt. As his officers scrambled to relay the order, Threxel cast one last glance at Earth. A world that would not surrender. A world that would rather burn than bow. This was not the end. He would return. He would find another way. But not today. The Empire's fleet began to pull away. Some vessels, still caught in the AI's grip, remained behind, locked in futile battles against hijack systems. But the bulk of the invasion force was retreating. On the Revenant, the crew watched the withdrawal in grim silence. Halstead broke the quiet first. They're running. Not running, Voss corrected. They're surviving. Across the comms, Admiral Kirchner's voice cut through. We did it. They're leaving. Voss didn't answer immediately. He had no illusions. The Empire had resources beyond imagining. They would return. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next year. But one day. Sir. Halstead prompted. Voss straightened. Prepare the next phase. We're not done yet. She hesitated. You're sure? He glanced back at the viewport, at the dying embers of Earth's final defiance. Yes. Because this wasn't just about today. It was about making sure that when the Empire returned, if they returned, humanity wouldn't be here to meet them. Not as they expected, anyway. They would not find subjects. They would not find survivors. They would find only ghosts. The Empire was retreating, but humanity was not finished. On the bridge of the UEN Revenant, Captain Elias Voss watched the last Imperial ships break formation, turning away from Earth's burning corpse. The great conquerors, the rulers of 1,000 worlds, had learned fear. But fear was not enough. Not yet. Status on the fleet? Voss asked. Lieutenant Wren Halstead scanned the display. We lost most of the orbital defense stations. Remaining ships are scattered, maybe 24 still combat-capable. The rest, gone. Voss nodded. And Project Last Dawn? Phase 2 is ready. That was all he needed to hear. The plan had never been just about denying Earth to the Empire. Humanity's survival meant ensuring the enemy could never return, that they would never have another chance to regroup, to try again. Which meant bringing the war to them. Voss turned to his communications officer. Open a fleet-wide channel. A soft chime signaled connection. Across what remained of humanity's forces, voices fell silent, waiting. "This is Captain Voss," he said. "We've done what we set out to do. Earth is gone. Our homes, our cities, our history, it's all ash now. But we are still here." He let the words sink in before continuing. "The Empire thought they could crush us. They thought we would kneel. Instead, we took everything from them. Their prize, their victory, denied. But that's not enough. We cannot let them regroup. We cannot let them learn from this, adapt, come back stronger. This war ends today." Another pause. Then, the final command. "We are taking the fight to the Imperial homeworld." The Revenant led the charge. Humanity's last warships, battered but unbroken, followed. Destroyers, stealth frigates, and automated drone carriers surged forward, punching through the Empire's disorganized retreat. What had been a withdrawal turned into a full-fledged pursuit. Threxel VKR had barely reached the edge of the Sol system when the first human attack struck. His fleet, still reeling from the Earth catastrophe, scrambled to respond. But their formations were broken, their command structure in disarray. They had expected a shattered enemy, desperate and fleeing. Instead, they found wolves at their heels. On board the Eternal Dominion, alarms screamed. Officers shouted over each other, struggling to re-establish control. Threxel slammed a fist against the command console. "Impossible," he hissed. "They should be dead." An aide stammered, "Sir, they're chasing us." Threxel turned sharply. "Then crush them." The Empire still had superior numbers. Even weakened, their fleet was a colossus compared to humanity's remnants. But Voss knew the truth. Numbers didn't matter when the enemy was already broken inside. The battle raged across the void. The Revenant darted through gaps in the Empire's fleet, its railguns tearing through weakened hulls. Destroyers executed precision strikes, targeting capital ships' engines, leaving them stranded in the abyss. AI-controlled drones wove between Imperial formations, delivering payloads of virus-laced weaponry that turned their own systems against them. Voss stood firm on the bridge, giving orders with surgical precision. "Cut through their left flank. Take out their communication relays. Sir, enemy dreadnoughts repositioning at Vector. Ignore them. Focus on their coordination hubs. Blind them, then gut them." Ship by ship, the Empire fractured. What had once been an unstoppable force now moved like a wounded beast, reacting, struggling, flailing. Aboard the Eternal Dominion, Threxel felt the shift in the battle. It was slipping from his grasp. He had to retreat, had to warn the core worlds. Then the main display flickered. A new transmission. Threxel's mandibles clicked in fury as Voss appeared on screen. The human's eyes were cold, steady. No gloating. No joy. Just grim inevitability. "You should have left when you had the chance," Voss said. Then the Revenant fired. A railgun round, carrying the last of Earth's wrath, tore through the Eternal Dominion shields, carving a molten wound down its spine. The flagship lurched, lights flickering, alarms screaming. For the first time in his long career, Grand Marshal Threxel felt something he had never known before. He felt helpless. As his ship crumbled around him, he gave the only order he could. "All remaining forces, fall back." It was too late. The Revenant fired again. The Eternal Dominion cracked apart, its once mighty hull splintering into burning wreckage. The Empire's fleet, leaderless and broken, scattered into the void. The war was over. The battlefield was silent. Voss stood on the bridge, watching the last Imperial ships disappear into the dark. Humanity had won, not in the way wars were meant to be won, not with banners raised or planets claimed. But the Empire had come to conquer and had left with nothing. Halstead approached. "Orders." Voss exhaled. The fight was done. But the mission was not. "Execute Phase 3. She hesitated. "Are you sure?" "Do it." A signal pulsed through the remains of the human fleet. Across the system, the last survivors acknowledged. There would be no rebuilding. No rebirth. Humanity was not just ending the war. It was disappearing. The war was over. Humanity had won in the only way it could, by ensuring there was nothing left for the Empire to claim. Earth was a burning ruin, its colonies obliterated, its people scattered or gone. The Imperial fleet had retreated, their leader dead, their forces in disarray. But Captain Elias Voss knew it wasn't enough. Not yet. The Empire could rebuild. It could recover. Given time, it would regroup, analyze what had happened, and return with a vengeance. Humanity had denied them a victory, but it hadn't erased the threat. Not entirely. That was about to change. Standing on the bridge of the UN Revenant, Voss gave the final command. Initiate Phase 3. Across the remains of the human fleet, the last remnants of Project Last Dawn activated. This was not an attack, not another desperate act of defiance. This was something more permanent. Hidden deep in the wreckage of Earth's orbital defense grid, ancient protocols engaged. AI systems, dormant for decades, came to life. In abandoned research stations across the void, long-forgotten technologies flickered awake. Humanity had spent centuries preparing for the possibility of extinction, but not in the way the Empire had assumed. There was no plan to rebuild. No desperate bid for survival. Instead, there was only the plan to disappear. Lieutenant Wren Halstead stood beside Voss, watching the displays as the final stage began. Every signal, every trace, wiped, she reported. Satellites self-destructing. Deep space colonies activating blackout protocols. Quantum comms are being flooded with noise. Within the next hour, no one in the galaxy will be able to track us. Voss nodded. And the fleet? Halstead hesitated. Jumping, just like we planned. We're scattering. No patterns, no trails. Every ship is vanishing into deep space, one by one. Voss looked out at the void, knowing that beyond the viewport, what remained of the human race was slipping away. Some ships would jump to the far edges of the galaxy, where no empire had ever reached. Others would disappear into anomalies, taking their chances in uncharted space. A few, just a few, had been given coordinates to something deeper, something older. Something humanity had hidden long before the war had ever begun. What about the sleeper ships? Voss asked. Halstead checked her console. Already gone. They launched before the battle even started. Good. It had been the last contingency, the final step of the plan. Before the war, before the Empire had even arrived, humanity had sent ships into the void, arcs carrying frozen passengers, waiting for a future where they could awaken far from Imperial reach. Most of them would never be found. That was the point. The Empire would search. It would send scouts, probes, expeditions into the dark. It would find ruins, echoes of what had once been. But it would never find what it was looking for. Because there would be nothing left to find. Far beyond the wreckage of the battlefield, Grand Marshal Threxel VKer sat in the command chamber of a surviving warship. The Eternal Dominion was gone. His fleet was shattered. He had suffered a defeat unlike any in Imperial history. And yet, that was not what disturbed him most. What disturbed him was the silence. The humans were vanishing. Sensors could no longer detect their ships. Their comms, once filled with desperate transmissions, had gone dark. Every trace of their existence, their beacons, their networks, their bases, was disappearing as if they had never been there at all. A young officer hesitated before speaking. Sir, we can't find them. Threxel's mandibles clicked. Find them. No. We're trying. There's nothing. It didn't make sense. There should have been survivors. There should have been refugees, drifting wrecks, distress signals. A broken species should have left behind remnants. But humanity wasn't broken. It was erasing itself. Threxel clenched his claws. We will search every system, every world, every inch of the void. I do not care how long it takes. We will find them. But even as he said the words, he knew the truth. He had not conquered humanity. He had not wiped them out. They had simply left. And he would never know where. On board the Revenant, Voss watched as the last of the human fleet vanished from sensors. Halstead turned to him. Final ship has jumped. He exhaled. That was it. No turning back. And us? She asked. Voss looked at the last set of coordinates on his display, the final destination of the Revenant. It was not a known system. It was not on any map. It was a place that had existed only in whispers, in contingency plans drawn up long before the Empire had ever arrived. A sanctuary. Or a grave. "Take us in," he said. The Revenant's engines hummed. The stars stretched. And then, humanity's last warship disappeared, leaving nothing behind but silence.